you look at the recording and say, what in the world? What's in front of my face?
Oh, good morning every day.
Good morning.
I just have to take you all in for a minute. Receive in my heart and in my soul your presence, and how glorious it is just feeling to the bottom of my toes how sweet it is to be together today. Just in case you forgot, since the last time you were here, or in case someone online is here for the first time, or this is the very first talk you will hear online on our YouTube channel. I'm Reverend Ann Rea, and I am so privileged to serve with this community. You know, Matt said at the beginning, this is where it's at. And I believe that. I believe that this is where love displays itself. This is where joy can come out and play. This is where kindness is served up as a regular meal. This is where it's at.
Yay.
Woo!
Great.
So, in case anybody happened to take a look at their newsletter, you know that at least this week I'm talking about fear. What you haven't known until now is that I'm talking all month about fear. Now, why in the world would I do that? Because there are people all over the world who are not in any particular stress at this moment, and that they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
There is an underlying current of unsettledness and fearful thoughts or dreams or anxiety for no apparent reason that we may be experiencing or someone we love may be experiencing. And you know, so often we're experiencing these very things and not necessarily realizing it. We just might feel a little off our game. You know what I mean? We just might feel a little something, a little something, something. And what I know from my personal experience about fear is that I have learned, because believe me, I didn't know this. I wasn't born knowing it. Well, actually, I was born knowing this, but I didn't know it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I was, I became aware that there were ways to work with fear. You know, and there's lots of famous quotes and memes about looking fear in the eye and all of that sort of thing. And I have done that. You know, I've checked it out to see what happened if I looked fear in the eye and called it out, asked it to tell me what it believes, what it thinks is going on. Fear is rarely about this now moment. And and when we look at the global population, and we know that there are people who have every reason to feel afraid and anxious and home without a home for themselves, without a safe home for themselves, in many different places. But that is not who I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to those of us who don't have those concerns. Don't worry about where the next bomb is coming from. I'm not disregarding those concerns, understand. But there are way more of us in total numbers who are living in safety and living in, as if we look at it as a relevant term, in ease and comfort. And still, we have these unidentifiable so far weird feelings. So what do we do about that? Well, the first thing that I learned about fear that really helped me was that fear is about the future. As I just said, it's not about this now moment. It's about the future. And it's a good thing to learn to not borrow trouble from the future, which is what that is, right? We do the same. Worry is just another name for fear. It's just another outfit for fear. So what I learned that I'm going to share with you over these next 4 weeks is to treat fear like I would anyone that I didn't yet know. Anything that I didn't yet understand. Which is why my title is, Hello, Fear. I'm Curiosity. I haven't made, there's a thing, a tradition that went on for years and decades and ever, that the way to get rid of a thought you were having or a feeling you were having that you didn't want to have was to deny it, was to say, out, damn spot. And ignore it. Well, that doesn't work so well. What works better is to, as I said, treat it like anyone you don't know. That because any thoughts that we have are there to give us information. And whether the information is to show us where our thinking has gone sideways, or to show us where we're borrowing trouble from the future, or to show us where we've bought into somebody else's ideas and beliefs about horrible and terrible and everything's going to hell in a handbasket and I could go on and on. Um, then telling it to go away or trying to ignore it is not the solution. So, how do we treat fear like anyone that we're meeting for the first time that we want to get to know? We bring our curiosity. Instead of more fear, because sometimes fear can make us more afraid. Anybody ever had that happen? Instead of bringing more fear, bringing our curiosity. So it can go sort of like this. Hello, fear. We haven't met before. And I'd like to get to know you. So tell me about yourself. Now, am I talking about having a conversation where you're talking out loud to yourself? You betcha. I'm not going to tell you have to do it in front of a mirror or anything like that. And you don't have to write a million post-it notes. I'm just suggesting, because when we speak out loud, when we speak what we're feeling out loud, it gets it out of here and into a bigger playground, a bigger field where all kinds of things can happen, including its release with a new understanding on our part. So I continue. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to get to know more about you. So tell me what's going on. Tell me what has contributed to who you are. Fear. Because I'm really curious to know. And fear might say in your mind, if you hear it out loud, don't be afraid. I mean that. Fear might say, well, I don't know what's happening. I spend a lot of my time worrying about not knowing what's happening, not knowing what's happening next. Oh, well, I can understand how that would feel unsettling, right? But the thing is, if we're really living in the moment, we never know what's happening. Because the next moment evolves into whatever it will if we're really committed to living in the moment. And that's something that we can develop a trust around. We can be so present. And I understand that fear, you being present isn't your comfort zone. Because you're trying to figure out what's going to happen next, or next, or next, and the whole chain in between. And so I can understand why that might make you feel uncomfortable. To not be able to really grasp a truth or what feels true to you about the future. And fear says, well, I don't like being out of control. Clearly, I get it. Because when we can't really predict that the story we're making up is how things are going to be, when that turns out to be empty information, I can understand how that might trigger you. What else triggers you? Well, that's really the big one, is not feeling in control. Yep, that makes total sense to me. Now, you might notice I've stepped aside right now from my conversation with fear. You might notice that my tone with fear is filled with compassion and my desire to be the presence of, to be a loving presence. Because fear is not the enemy. Fear is not the enemy unless we believe it is. Fear is just doing the best it can with what it has. And from what it has, what it can make up. So that's why it is so important to bring our curiosity so that we can recognize within ourselves what's true and what's not. Because the story that fear is making up is a total fantasy about the future. Total. And I'm just going to step into principle for a minute here, not that I ever left it, but what happens to what we focus on? It manifests. So if we're focused on fear, if we're focused on our fear, if we're focused on the fantasy, if we're focused on the extrapolation of this potential future from which we are borrowing trouble, and I keep saying that because it impacts us. It impacts our health. It impacts our sense of well-being. It impacts our feeling of being grounded and centered. It impacts our ability to be clear and focused and stay in the now. So, I'm not saying this to fear. I'm still out of that conversation for just a moment. Fear had to go to the restroom. Since what we focus on manifests and multiplies, different choices are required. And my point of this series of talks is to help us figure out how to get to those different choices when all this chatter is going on and we feel at its affect. First, and I'm so glad that fear left the room for a moment because I have to be careful where I say this. Fear has no power of its own. Fear has no power of its own. It has the power we give it. And what I mean by giving our fear power is that we literally, the more power we give whatever fear we are allowing, accepting, encouraging, feeding in our thoughts and feelings, the more power we give it, the more likely it is to show up in our experience. And the reason for that is because where does the real power lie? In here. In here. Because in case you forgot, there's one life, there's one power, there's one presence, and it expresses as us and the rest of its incredible creation. It expresses through us. So it's not all of that power that is our power, although we have access to all of that power. We have an all-access pass to all of the power, to all of the courage, to all of the clarity, to all of the faith, to all of the trust, to all of the love, to all of the acceptance that we can handle. And we may think, well, I can handle it all. Let me tell you, you don't want it all. Because all means all. Including some of the versions of the all that we see that we don't like. Even if it's green chilies. Or red. I don't want to leave anybody out. So when we abdicate our power, when we give up our power to another person who sounds like they have more authority or more intelligence or more understanding or more whatever than we do, when we give up our power, when we abdicate our power to a feeling that we're having that is uncomfortable and makes us ill at ease. You know, happiness, I'll just throw in this one for free. Happiness, not that we charge, happiness is never uncomfortable. A lot of it may feel uncomfortable to some people, but that's only because they haven't grown into being a lot of happy, or a lot of in awe, or a lot of in joy, or a lot of in love. That does require some evolution on our part. But that kind of discomfort of being uncomfortable with too much happiness or too much love, unimaginable, but for me, but that discomfort doesn't feel the same as fear. It doesn't knock us off our feet the way fear can. Oh, okay. So the conversation resumes. Oh, good, you're back. So, why is it so important that to feel in control? What difference do you think that makes? I just want to understand. Well, control is everything. Say more. Well, when I'm in control, or when I feel in control, then I can prevent things from happening that I don't want to have happen. So, what don't you want to have happen? Just give me an example. Well, I don't want to. I don't want my car to break down. I don't want to get COVID again. I don't want to. I don't want to get any of these funny disease things that are roaming around. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm just giving you a shortcut to the rest of the conversation. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. Okay. I hear you. Now tell me what you do want. I get what you don't want. Well, I want control. Okay, I hear that. And if that isn't on the table for you to have a feeling of control, what's next on your list? I'm not sure. Because that control thing seems like, it's the thing. Well, what do you imagine control would give you besides all those things not happening? What if you had all of the control you wanted to have or needed to have or cared to have, what feeling would it bring? How would it change the way you feel? Because you seem so angry and just insistent and worried. Well, I think I would feel some kind of peace. I think I would feel some kind of ease. Because I wouldn't be worried about all that other stuff. And so at the end of the conversation, I say, I really hear you, and I hear the legitimacy of everything you're concerned about. But I also hear that peace and ease is most important. Because if all of those things happened or didn't happen or were handled, peace and ease, peace of mind, peace of heart, peace of being, and ease would be yours. So let's do an experiment together, you and I. And just for a week, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, let's do our best to stay in what's true. What's right in front of us? What's our immediate next step? What's true? what's ours to do, not globally, not big picture, little picture. What's ours to do that would contribute to that feeling of peace and ease? How can we work with an experiment where we reassure each other that right now, everything is okay. Right now, everything is okay. We're okay. But what about all the other people who aren't okay? We'll get there. Our first work is to get okay within. Our first work is for us to notice that right now, if we just consider ourselves right where we are, not taking in anyone else or what might or might not be happening with anyone else, no matter how close to us they are. Right now, everything's okay. So let's do that. What do you say? Right now. And so it is.